The boardroom doors were mahogany and heavy, the kind that swallowed sound before it could escape. But I heard it anyway, the sharp crack of a gavel, the murmur of voices that didn't bother lowering when they talked about people like they were assets on a balance sheet. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was waiting in the hallway outside Confront's executive floor, watching my husband through the narrow window in the door, and trying to understand why his mother had summoned him to an emergency board meeting at 9 p.m. on a Thursday. Chairman Park stood at the head of the table, silver-haired and imposing in the way only men who've spent decades wielding power can be. Confront requires stability, he said, his voice carrying the weight of finality. And stability requires a legitimate successor. I watched Min-jae's face go pale, watched his mother, elegant, composed, devastating in her traditional hanbok, slide a document across the polished table. Even from where I stood, I could see the official seal, the clinical language of legal paperwork. Inside, a DNA report. My hand pressed against the glass. Cold. Everything felt cold. I didn't know then what was in that folder. Didn't know that the ghost of his past hadn't just left memories behind. She'd left something far more permanent, far more dangerous to everything I'd fought to build. I thought we'd survive the worst. I thought choosing each other every day would be enough. I didn't know that in Korea, love is not enough when legacy is involved. And I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. If you thought part 1 was intense, you have no idea what's coming. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story is about to get brutal. 3 months had passed since Seo-rin moved to London. 3 months of what I desperately wanted to believe was peace. Min-jae came home earlier now, texted me throughout the day, planned weekend trips to Jeju Island and Busan, where we could pretend to be a normal couple without the weight of his family name pressing down on us. We'd had the hard conversations, the ones about trust and transparency and what it meant to choose each other when the world seemed determined to pull us apart. I'd started to relax, started to believe that maybe we'd actually made it through the storm. I should have known better. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was in our penthouse kitchen making coffee when Min-jae's phone buzzed with a message. He was in the shower, so I glanced at the screen reflexively. It was from his mother. Emergency board meeting tonight. 9 p.m. Non-negotiable. Do not bring her. Do not bring her. Like I was a security risk. Like I was something to be managed. When Min-jae came out, toweling his hair dry, I asked him about it as casually as I could manage. Your mom texted. Something about a board meeting. His jaw tightened. Just slightly. Just enough for me to notice after 2 years of learning to read the micro-expressions he thought he hid so well. It's nothing. Just quarterly review stuff. At 9 p.m., the board meets when the board meets. He kissed my forehead, grabbed his briefcase, and left for the office before I could press further. But I knew. God help me. I knew something was wrong. You don't survive what we'd survived without developing instincts for when your partner is keeping secrets. And Min-jae was keeping something from me again. That evening, I did something I'm not proud of. I followed him. Not in some dramatic car chase through Seoul traffic, but simply by showing up at Confront an hour before the meeting and waiting in the lobby cafe where I could see the executive elevators. I watched him arrive with his mother, watched them exchange words I couldn't hear, watched her place a hand on his arm in a gesture that looked almost like comfort. Then I took the elevator up, used the key card he didn't know I'd had made months ago, my own small insurance policy after all the secrets. Made my way to the executive floor where I absolutely was not supposed to be. And that's when I heard it. Through the boardroom door. Chairman Park's voice, cold and clinical. The boy is 6 years old. DNA confirmed. The family registry has been updated automatically as of his 6th birthday, which means he is now legally recognized as part of the Kong bloodline. I stopped breathing. 6 years old. 6 years ago, Min-jae was still married to Seo-rin. The math crashed into me like a freight train. The implications stacked up so fast I had to grip the wall to stay upright. Seo-rin had a child. Min-jae's child. A son who was 6 years old, which meant she'd been pregnant when they divorced, or... I didn't know. Min-jae's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. I swear to God, I didn't know. Whether you knew is irrelevant, Chairman Park replied. The child exists. He is registered under Kong family name. And the board has concerns about succession planning given recent instability in your personal life. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against the cold glass, watching my husband stand there like a man facing execution. His mother spoke next, her voice carrying that particular tone of aristocratic certainty that had always made me feel like I was playing a game whose rules I'd never learned. In Korea, bloodline is not negotiable. This child, your son, represents continuity, legacy, the very foundation of what this company was built upon. If you're feeling that sick drop in your stomach right now, if you understand what this means for everything, comment below, because I need to know I'm not alone in this nightmare. I don't remember getting home. Don't remember the taxi ride, or walking through our lobby, or taking the elevator up to the penthouse that suddenly felt like a cage. I just remember standing in our living room when Min-jae finally came through the door at midnight, his face drawn and exhausted, and knowing that everything was about to shatter again. Who is he? I asked before he could even put down his briefcase. He froze. You were there. Who is he? Min-jae closed his eyes. When he opened them again, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not fear, but devastation. Complete, absolute devastation. His name is Kang Jian. He's 6 years old. He lives in London with Seo Rin. And I swear on everything I have, I didn't know he existed until 2 weeks ago. The words hung in the air like poison. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to demand how the hell he could not know he had a son for 6 years. But the look on his face stopped me. This wasn't the practiced corporate calm he wore like armor. This was a man who'd just discovered his entire understanding of his life was built on lies. Tell me everything, I said quietly. Right now? No more secrets. No more protection. Tell me everything. He sat down heavily on the couch, head in his hands. After the divorce was finalized, Seo Rin left Seoul immediately. She told everyone, me included, that she was moving to Singapore to work for a tech startup. I never heard from her again. Never tried to reach out because she'd asked me not to. She said the cleanest break was a complete one. She was pregnant. She must have been, or found out shortly after leaving. I don't know. He looked up at me, and I saw tears on his face for the first time in our entire relationship. In Korea, family registry is automatic. When a child born to a divorced mother reaches age 6, the system checks paternity through archived marriage records and medical data. If there's a match to a registered father, the child is automatically added to the family registry. It's meant to protect children's inheritance rights. So the system found him. The system found him and sent notification to the head of the Kang family, my mother, 2 weeks ago. She didn't tell me immediately because she wanted to verify the situation first. The bitterness in his voice was cutting. She hired investigators, confirmed everything, then presented it to the board before telling me because she wanted to control the narrative. I sat down across from him, my mind racing through implications. The board wants him as heir. The board wants stability. They want assurance that Kangtech will remain in family hands. And a biological heir, a son, provides that assurance in ways that... He trailed off, but I finished the sentence in my head. In ways that a foreign wife cannot. Does he know? I asked. Does your son know about you? Seo Rin told him I was dead. Min-jae's voice broke on the words. She told him his father died before he was born. She was going to keep it that way. But the registry notification went to her too, and now she's facing legal questions about why she hid a Kang family heir. The family lawyers are threatening custody challenges if she doesn't cooperate with integration. Integration. The word tasted like ash. You mean they want to take him from her? They want him in Korea. Want him raised in the family. Want him positioned as successor. He finally looked at me directly. They want me to publicly acknowledge him as my son and heir. There's a press conference scheduled for next week. The room spun. I gripped the arm of the chair, trying to find something solid in a world that kept shifting under my feet. And what do you want? I want to know my son. The words came out raw, honest. I want to meet him, talk to him, be part of his life. He's my child, and I've already missed 6 years because of lies and systems, and he stopped, collecting himself. But I don't want to lose you. And I'm terrified that I can't have both. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Seoul spread below us like a galaxy of lights, each one representing someone with their own dramas, their own impossible choices. You have a son, I said quietly. A child who didn't ask to be born into this mess, who was told his father was dead, who's about to have his entire world turned upside down. This isn't about me. This is about a 6-year-old boy. It's about all of us. No. I turned to face him. It's about whether you're going to let your family and that board use a child as a pawn in their succession game. It's about whether you're going to fight for what's right or just accept what's convenient. What's right is complicated. What's right is protecting that boy from the media, from the pressure, from becoming a tool for corporate politics. I crossed my arms. When does Seo-rin arrive in Korea? His silence was answer enough. She's already here, isn't she? She landed this morning. With Jin. He stood up, moved toward me. She's staying at the family estate. My mother insisted. Said it would look better for the press announcement. Of course she was. Of course Min-jae's mother had already orchestrated every piece of this. I wondered how long she'd been planning this reveal, waiting for the perfect moment to destabilize my marriage again. Because that's what this was, underneath all the talk of legacy and bloodline. This was the family's final play to push out the foreign wife who'd never been good enough. I need to meet him, I said. Min-jae looked shocked. What? Your son? I need to meet him. If we're going to figure out how to navigate this, I need to see him with my own eyes. Need to understand what we're actually dealing with. That's not a good idea. Why? Because your mother said so? Because Seo-rin might be uncomfortable? Or because you're afraid I'll see how easily I can be replaced? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Because he's 6 years old and his world is already falling apart, Min-jae said quietly. Because he just found out his father isn't dead, and he's in a foreign country with strangers telling him he's someone important he doesn't understand being. Because adding another new person, my wife who isn't his mother, might be more than he can handle right now. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. Still, the thought of Seo-rin and her son living at the Kong estate, being welcomed into the family in ways I'd never been, made something dark and ugly twist in my chest. Tomorrow, I said. You're taking me to the estate tomorrow. I don't have to meet him yet. But I'm not sitting in this penthouse while your family makes decisions about our future without me in the room. I'm done being shut out. For a moment, I thought he'd argue. Then he nodded. Tomorrow. That night, we slept in the same bed, but miles apart. Each of us pretending the other was asleep, while we stared at the ceiling and wondered how we'd ended up here again. If you've ever felt like the universe keeps testing whether your love is strong enough, hit that like button because the tests were just getting started. The Kong family estate sat in northern Seoul like a monument to old money and older traditions. Traditional Hanok architecture combined with modern security systems, gardens that required full-time staff, and an atmosphere that reminded you with every perfectly raked gravel path that you were stepping into a world where bloodline mattered more than love. I'd been here exactly 3 times in 2 years of marriage. Min-jae's mother didn't entertain often, and when she did, I was rarely invited. But today, I walked through those gates with my head high and my spine straight, wearing a conservative navy dress and the pearls Min-jae had given me for our first anniversary, armor in the form of respectability. The main house loomed ahead, all dark wood and traditional roof tiles. Min-jae's hand found mine as we approached, squeezed once in solidarity. Then the door opened, and his mother stood there in a deep purple hanbok, her expression carefully neutral. You brought her, she said to Min-jae, not even looking at me. My wife has every right to be here for family discussions, he replied evenly. This is not a family discussion. This is a private matter regarding the heir. The heir is my son. My wife's presence is non-negotiable. Something flickered in his mother's eyes, surprise, maybe, or reassessment. She stepped aside. The child is in the garden with his mother. We will speak in my sitting room first. We followed her through halls I'd never been allowed to explore, past rooms filled with antiques worth more than most people's homes, until we reached a traditional sitting room where Chairman Park and 2 other board members I recognized were waiting with tea that had probably gone cold an hour ago. This wasn't a family meeting. This was an ambush. Mrs. Kong, Chairman Park said, gesturing to a cushion on the floor. Not my name. Not even Min-jae's name. Just the title that reminded me I was interchangeable. How thoughtful of you to join us. I sat with as much grace as I could muster in a dress not designed for floor sitting. Min-jae sat beside me, his body tense as a wire. Let's be direct, Chairman Park continued. The existence of Min-jae's son changes the succession landscape considerably. The board has concerns about stability and continuity. We need to ensure that Kong Tech's leadership transition is secure. My son is 6 years old, Min-jae said tightly. He's not succeeding anyone for at least 20 years. which is precisely why we need to establish clear plans now. Proper education. Proper integration into the family business. Proper. He paused delicately. Positioning. You want to use a child as a PR tool, I said quietly. Every head turned toward me. You want to parade him in front of cameras and investors to show that the company has a legitimate heir. Never mind what that pressure does to him. Never mind that he doesn't know any of you. Never mind that his mother kept him hidden for 6 years because she knew exactly what you would do to him. The silence that followed was arctic. Min-jae's mother set down her teacup with careful precision. You speak of things you do not understand. In Korea, family obligation is not cruelty. It is honor. The boy carries Kong blood. He has responsibilities. He's 6, which is old enough to begin learning what it means to be part of this legacy. She turned to Min-jae. The press conference will happen next week as planned. You will acknowledge Jin publicly. You will commit to his proper upbringing and education. And you will demonstrate to the board and investors that this family's future is secure. And if I refuse? The temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. Then the board will have to consider whether you remain the appropriate person to lead Kongtech. Chairman Park said smoothly. These are unprecedented circumstances. We have options for interim leadership should you prove unable to handle the complexity of the situation. It was a coup, dressed up in corporate language and family obligation, but a coup nonetheless. Acknowledge the son and bend to their control, or lose the company. Those were the only choices they were giving him. I watched my husband's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. The same calculation that had led him to let Seo-rin go 7 years ago. The same pattern of choosing the company over everything else. But this time, there was a child involved. A real, living child who didn't deserve to be a bargaining chip. Before Min-jae could respond, the sliding door opened, and Seo-rin walked in. She looked different from the last time I'd seen her, softer somehow, more human. She wore simple black pants and a cream sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. This wasn't the polished society woman who'd haunted my marriage. This was a mother who'd been backed into a corner. We need to talk, she said, looking directly at Min-jae. Without them, her eyes swept the board members with obvious contempt. Chairman Park stood. Ms. Yoon, we were just discussing the arrangements for. I know what you were discussing. I can hear you from the garden. She held the door open. Get out. All of you. This is between me and my son's father. And his wife, she added, glancing at me with something that might have been respect. The board members looked at Min-jae's mother, who gave a curt nod. They filed out silently, leaving the 4 of us in a room that suddenly felt too small. Seo-rin closed the door, turned to face us. They want to destroy him, she said flatly. They want to turn my son into a symbol and a tool and a successor before he even understands what any of those words mean. And I won't let them. Then why did you come back? I asked. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since that awful anniversary dinner months ago. Because they gave me no choice. The family registry notification triggered automatic legal review. They're threatening custody challenges, claiming I hit a Kong heir intentionally. They have lawyers and money and influence, and I'm a single mother who left Korea in disgrace. How do you think that plays out in family court? So you're here to negotiate surrender, Min-jae said quietly. I'm here to protect my son the only way I have left. She pulled out her phone, showed us a photo. A small boy with Min-jae's eyes and Seo-rin's delicate features, smiling at the camera with the unconscious joy of a child who didn't yet understand how complicated the world was. His name is Kong Jian. He likes dinosaurs and swimming and building things with Legos. He thinks his father died saving people in a car accident because that's what I told him when he was old enough to ask. And now I have to tell him I lied. I have to tell him his father is alive and powerful and important, and that he's important too in ways that are going to change his entire life. The pain in her voice was real. Whatever else Seo-rin had done, whatever games she'd played, this was a mother terrified for her child. What do you want? Min-jae asked. I want you to meet him. Talk to him. Be his father if you're going to be his father. But I want it private. Gradual. Not this circus they're planning. She looked at both of us. And I want your word that you won't let them use him. That no matter what happens between us, between you two, between any of the adults in this nightmare, that child comes first. He will, I said before Min-jae could respond. Both of them looked at me in surprise. You're right that he didn't ask for any of this. And you're right that the board doesn't care about what's best for him. So yes, he comes first. Above pride. Above revenge. Above everything. Seo-rin studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Maybe I was wrong about you. You were wrong about a lot of things, I replied. But this isn't about us. This is about making sure that boy out there doesn't pay for adult decisions. Then we need a strategy, Min-jae said, his CEO voice emerging. Because the board isn't going to back down easily, and if we're not careful, Jin becomes exactly what they want, a pawn. For the next hour, the three of us talked, planned, negotiated the impossible task of protecting a child while navigating corporate politics and family pressure and the media storm that was about to hit. It was surreal, sitting in that traditional Korean room with my husband and his ex-wife, planning how to shield the son I'd only just learned existed. But somehow, it also felt right. Like maybe for the first time since this nightmare began, we were all on the same side. The garden door slid open. A small voice called out, "Yama?" We all froze. And then he was there in the doorway. Kong Jian, 6 years old, with dark hair that stuck up in the back and his father's intense eyes and a t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it. He looked at Seo-rin, then at Min-jae, then at me, his expression curious but uncertain. "Yama, Halmiani says it's time for..." He stopped mid-sentence, staring at Min-jae. Really staring. In that way children do when they're trying to figure out something important. "You look like the picture," he said in Korean accented English. "The one Yama has in her room." Seo-rin stood quickly. "Jian, baby, these are..." "I'm Min-jae," he said gently, crouching down to the boy's level. "It's very nice to meet you." Jian tilted his head, processing. And then, with the devastating directness of a 6-year-old, "Are you my appa?" The question hung in the air like a detonation. Min-jae looked at Seo-rin. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He turned back to the small boy who was his son, and I saw his hands shaking. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm your appa." Jian considered this. Then, "Iyama said you were dead." "I know, and I'm sorry that you were told that. But I'm here now, and I want to know you, if that's okay with you." The boy looked at his mother again, seeking permission or reassurance, or maybe just confirmation that this was real. She knelt beside him, wrapped him in her arms. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. Are you going to stay dead?" Jian asked Min-jae with the heartbreaking logic of childhood. "Or are you going to stay alive now?" "I'm going to stay alive," Min-jae promised, his voice breaking. "I'm going to stay alive, and I'm going to be here. I promise." Jian nodded seriously, as if this made perfect sense. Then his eyes found me. "Who are you?" I smiled at him, my heart breaking and healing at the same time. "My name is Ade. I'm married to your appa." He processed this information with the same careful consideration he'd given everything else. "So you're like a bonus Yama?" The term was so innocent, so completely unaware of the complexity it represented, that I almost laughed. "Something like that." "Cool," Jin decided. Then, with the lightning-fast attention span of a 6-year-old, Halmiani said there's chocolate cake in the kitchen. "Can I have some?" Seo-rin laughed through her tears. "Yes, baby. Go ask Halmiani for some cake." He ran off, leaving the three of us in stunned silence. "Bonus Yama," I repeated finally. "That's one way to put it." Min-jae looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, gratitude, maybe, or disbelief that I was still here. You didn't have to be kind to him. He's 6 years old, and his world just fell apart. Kindness is the least I can offer. I stood up, smoothing my dress. "But we have bigger problems. Your mother is going to push that press conference. The board is going to demand control of how Jian is raised and educated. And we have about a week to figure out how to protect him from all of it." "She's right," Seo-rin said. "They're not going to let this go quietly." "Then we don't go quietly," Min-jae said. His voice had changed, hardened. This was the CEO who'd built an empire. "We control the narrative before they can. We make the announcement on our terms, with our conditions. And we make it clear that Jian's well-being comes before business interests. They'll threaten your position," I warned. "Let them." He looked at both of us. "I lost one family to this company. I won't lose another. If you're wondering how the hell this is going to work, comment below, because honestly, so was I. But sometimes you don't need a plan. You just need to decide what you're willing to fight for." The next 6 days were chaos. Min-jae spent hours with Jian under Seo-rin's careful supervision, building trust with a son who'd thought he was dead. I watched from a distance, giving them space but staying present enough that Jin started getting comfortable with my presence too. Bonus Yama, do you like dinosaurs? He asked me on day 3, holding up a plastic stegosaurus. I love dinosaurs, I told him honestly. Did you know the stegosaurus had a brain the size of a walnut? His eyes went wide. Really? Really? But it was still one of the smartest plant eaters of its time. Cool. He ran off to tell Min-jae this new fact, and I caught Seo-rin watching me with an unreadable expression. You're good with him, she said quietly. He's easy to be good with. He's a sweet kid. He is. She paused. Thank you. For not making this harder than it has to be. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive the press conference, which was scheduled for Monday morning. Min-jae had taken control of the planning, working with his communications team to craft a statement that acknowledged Jin without turning him into a spectacle. But the board was pushing back on every detail, demanding more access, more photo opportunities, more exploitation. Sunday night, Min-jae came home to the penthouse looking exhausted. I'd stayed out of the estate for most of the week, giving him space to bond with his son without the complication of my presence. But tonight, we needed to talk. They want Jin at the press conference, he said without preamble, standing next to me while I make the announcement. Absolutely not. That's what I said. Chairman Park called it necessary for visual confirmation and family unity. Chairman Park can go to hell. Min-jae smiled grimly. I told him something similar, less colorfully. He sat down heavily on the couch. I don't know how to do this. How to protect him and keep the company and keep you and make everyone happy. You can't make everyone happy, I said, sitting beside him. That's not how this works. You have to choose what matters most and fight for that. What matters most is that little boy not growing up thinking he's only valuable because of his last name. Then that's what we protect. I took his hand. Everything else is negotiable. He looked at me, really looked at me, with the kind of vulnerability I'd fought so hard to reach in our relationship. How are you so calm about this? 6 days ago, you found out I had a son with my ex-wife. Most people would have left. I thought about it, I admitted. That first night, I thought about packing a bag and going to a hotel and maybe just staying gone. But then I thought about what you said, that a child shouldn't pay for adult decisions. And I realized that includes the decision to abandon him because the situation is complicated. You're not his mother. No, but I can be someone safe in his life. Someone who doesn't want anything from him except for him to be okay. I squeezed his hand. Besides, I didn't marry you thinking everything would be simple. I married you knowing your life was complicated. This is just more complicated than expected. Understatement of the century. The press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m. Min-jae's mother had tried one last time that morning to insist Jin be present, and for the first time in his life, I watched my husband tell his mother no with such finality that even she had to back down. The main conference room at Kongtech was packed with reporters, cameras, and the kind of energy that comes right before a bomb drops. Min-jae stood at the podium in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO. I stood off to the side where the cameras couldn't quite reach me, watching. Seo-rin was in the back of the room, her face unreadable. Jin was safe at the estate with a nanny who'd been explicitly told that no one from the family or board was allowed near him during the conference. Min-jae cleared his throat. The room went silent. Thank you for coming. He began in Korean, then switched to English for the international press. I've called this conference to address recent speculation about my personal life and to make an important announcement regarding my family. He paused, gathering himself. 6 weeks ago, I learned that I have a son. His name is Kong Jian. He is 6 years old, and he is the most remarkable person I've had the privilege to meet. A slight smile crossed his face, genuine, unguarded. His existence came as a surprise to me, as his mother and I had lost contact after our divorce 7 years ago, due to complex circumstances that I will not detail publicly out of respect for my son's privacy. I was unaware of his birth. Cameras clicked frantically. Reporters started shouting questions. Min-jae held up a hand for silence. I am publicly acknowledging Kong Jian as my son and legal heir today because he deserves that recognition. But I want to be crystal clear about something. His voice hardened. My son is not a business asset. He is not a PR opportunity. He is not a symbol of corporate stability or family legacy. He is a 6-year-old child who deserves to have a childhood free from the pressure of expectations he's too young to understand. I saw Chairman Park in the front row, his face reddening. To that end, Min Jae continued. I am announcing that while I will maintain my position as CEO of Kongtech, I am immediately implementing a clear succession plan that does not involve my son until he is old enough to make his own choice about his involvement with this company, if he chooses involvement at all. The room erupted. Reporters shouting over each other, board members looking stunned, cameras flashing so fast it was like lightning. And then Min Jae said the thing that changed everything. Furthermore, I am establishing an independent trust for Jin's benefit, separate from Kongtech Holdings, managed by neutral trustees until his 18th birthday. This ensures his financial security while protecting him from being leveraged as a corporate asset. He paused. And I am stepping down as CEO, effective in 6 months, to ensure a smooth leadership transition that prioritizes the company's stability without compromising my son's well-being. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Stepping down? He was stepping down? Min Jae's mother stood abruptly, her face white with fury. Chairman Park looked like he might have a stroke. But Min Jae just stood there at the podium, calm and certain, having just blown up his entire life to protect a child he'd known for less than a week. Questions? He asked mildly. The room exploded into chaos. Every reporter was screaming. Every camera was flashing. Every board member was moving toward exits or pulling out phones. I couldn't hear myself think, but I could see Min Jae's eyes find mine across the room. Could see the question there. Did I do the right thing? I nodded. Once. Firmly. Yeah, he did. Comment below if you think he just made the biggest mistake of his life or the bravest choice he'll ever make, because even I didn't know the answer. The aftermath was nuclear. Chairman Park called an emergency board meeting for that afternoon, without Min Jae. His mother refused to speak to him for 3 days. The stock price dropped 4% in the first hour after the announcement, then stabilized as analysts started parsing what smooth transition might actually mean. And the media went absolutely insane. Headlines ranged from sympathetic, CEO puts family first, to vicious, Kongtech heir scandal, the foreign wife factor. The comment sections were warfare zones, particularly around the question of why Min Jae's African wife couldn't provide a proper Korean heir, and whether the company's succession crisis was somehow my fault. I stopped reading after the first 100 death threats. Seo Rin called me on Wednesday. Not Min Jae me. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Can you come to the estate? Why? Because Jin is asking questions I can't answer. About you. About what it means that his father is married to someone who isn't me. And I think he should hear those answers from you. So I went. Found her in the garden where Jin was building something elaborate with Legos, his tongue sticking out in concentration. Bonus Yama, he called when he saw me. Look, I made a spaceship. That's amazing, I told him, crouching down to admire his creation. Does it have a hyperdrive? What's a hyperdrive? It's what makes spaceships go really, really fast in space. Cool. I'll add one. He immediately started modifying his design. Seo Rin watched us with that same unreadable expression. He likes you. I like him too. He's a good kid. I know this is complicated for you, being involved with him when he's mine. He's not a possession, Seo Rin. He's a person. I know. But he's my person. The only thing I have left that matters. And if this all goes wrong, if the family gets their way and takes him from me, they won't. I looked at her directly. Min Jae won't let that happen. And neither will I. Why? The question was genuine. Why would you fight for my son? Because he's 6 years old and he deserves people fighting for him. And because watching Min Jae with him, I see how much he already loves that little boy, how much being a father means to him. I'm not going to be the person who makes that harder. She nodded slowly. When Min Jae told me about you, back when you first got married, I thought he was making a mistake. I thought you were just a distraction. Something different and exciting, but ultimately temporary. And now I think maybe you're the only one of us who actually sees clearly. She looked at where Jian was still building. The family wants me gone. They want Jian here, under their control, raised as a proper Kong heir. They want to erase me the same way they erased me 7 years ago. Min Jae won't let that happen. Can he stop it? He's stepping down as CEO. His mother controls the family trust. The board wants succession security. What leverage does he actually have? It was a good question, one I've been asking myself for days. The answer came from an unexpected source. That Friday, I got a call from David Kim, the private investigator I'd hired months ago to look into Seo-rin. I hadn't spoken to him since that coffee shop meeting that had revealed the truth about Min Jae's first marriage. Mrs. Kong, he said, I wasn't sure if I should call you, but I found something you need to know about. About what? About the Kong Tech Board. Specifically, about Chairman Park and his relationship with the family trust. An hour later, I was sitting in the same coffee shop where this nightmare had started, looking at documents that changed everything. Chairman Park has been systematically diverting family trust funds into personal investments, David explained, pointing to bank transfers and shell company formations. Small amounts over years, buried in complicated transactions. But it adds up to about $15 million. I stared at the papers. He's embezzling from the family. Technically, it's more like unauthorized personal use of trust assets. He's been the trustee for years, and the family never audited closely because they trusted him. Does anyone else know about this? Not yet. I only found it because I was doing a deep background check on all the board members after you hired me to look into Seo-rin. I kept the data, and when I saw what was happening with the succession fight, I thought, maybe this was relevant. Relevant? That was putting it mildly. Can I have copies of everything? Already in the envelope. I called Min Jae from the car. I need you to come home. Right now? I found something. When I showed him the documents, I watched his face go from confusion to shock to cold, calculated fury. He's been stealing from my family for years, he said quietly, while lecturing us about legacy and honor and duty. He's also the one pushing hardest to control Jian, to position him as heir and lock him into the family structure. Because if Jian becomes a visible part of the family, there'll be more scrutiny on the trust. Audits. Questions about how money is being managed. Min Jae's eyes met mine. He needs the succession to look stable and traditional so no one looks too closely at what he's been doing. What are you going to do? He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I'm going to give him exactly what he deserves. The following Monday, Min Jae called a full board meeting. Not just the executive committee, but every single board member and family trust representative. His mother was there, Seo-rin was there, and I was there too, sitting in the back where I could watch everything unfold. Chairman Park sat at the head of the table, looking smug. He thought this was about succession, about forcing Min Jae to commit to raising Jian as a traditional heir, about consolidating power. Min Jae stood. Thank you all for coming. I know the past week has been turbulent, and I appreciate your patience during this transition. We're here to discuss your son's integration into the family structure. Chairman Park interrupted. Not to rehash your dramatic press conference. Actually, we're here to discuss your immediate resignation from the board and as trustee of the Kong Family Trust. The room went dead silent. Excuse me. Chairman Park's face was turning purple. Min Jae slid a folder across the table. These are bank records showing systematic unauthorized diversion of family trust funds into your personal accounts over the past 8 years. $15 million in total. Would you like to explain these transactions, or should we proceed directly to legal action? I watched the color drain from Chairman Park's face. Watched the other board members grab the folder, pass around copies, start whispering urgently. His mother stood. Is this true? I can explain, Chairman Park started. Can you? Min Jae's voice was ice. Can you explain why you've been stealing from the family while lecturing us about honor and duty? Can you explain why you've been pushing to control my son's future while embezzling from his inheritance? This is outrageous. I've served this family for. You've served yourself. Min Jae pulled out another document. This is your resignation from the board, effective immediately. You'll sign it, return every dollar you stole, and face no criminal charges. Or we can involve the authorities and let them sort out where 8 years in prison leaves your legacy. The silence was absolute. Chairman Park looked around the table for support and found none. Even the board members who'd been pushing his agenda were leaning away from him, protecting themselves from the scandal. You can't do this, he said weakly. I already did. Min Jae gestured to the security guards who'd been standing quietly by the door. You have 5 minutes to vacate the building. I watched one of the most powerful men in Korean corporate society gather his things and walk out in disgrace, and I felt absolutely nothing except satisfaction. When the door closed behind him, Min Jae turned to the remaining board members. Now, let's talk about succession on terms that actually protect my son instead of treating him like an asset. The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, There was a new framework in place. Jin would be formally acknowledged as heir, but with legal protections that prevented him from being used for corporate purposes until he was 18. Seo-rin would maintain primary custody with agreed visitation for Min-jae. The family would provide financial support without strings attached, and Min-jae would remain as CEO, with a new succession plan that didn't depend on his 6-year-old son's availability. His mother approached me as everyone was filing out. "You found those documents." It wasn't a question. "I hired someone to look into the board after the first emergency meeting," I admitted. "I wanted to know who we were really dealing with." She studied me for a long moment. "I underestimated you. I thought you were temporary. A phase. Someone my son would move past when he remembered who he really was. And now I think perhaps you understand this family better than I gave you credit for." She paused. "You could have used those documents for yourself. Could have leveraged them to secure your position, push Seo-rin out, eliminate the competition. That's not what this was about." "What was it about then?" "Protecting a child, and making sure the people trying to use him couldn't." She nodded slowly. "My grandson is fortunate to have you in his life, even if you are not his mother." It was the closest thing to approval I'd ever gotten from her. I'd take it. That evening, Min-jae came home and collapsed on the couch. I sat beside him, both of us staring at the ceiling in exhausted silence. "Did we actually win?" I asked finally. "I don't know. Ask me in 18 years when Jin's old enough to decide for himself if we did the right thing." "Fair enough." He turned to look at me. "I'm sorry. For all of this. For the secrets and the complications, and the son I didn't know existed who turned your entire life upside down." "I'm not sorry. You should be." "Why? Because it was hard? Because it was complicated? Because I had to fight for my marriage?" I shook my head. "I told you on our wedding day that I was choosing you knowing it wouldn't always be easy. This was just a particularly hard chapter. Most people would have left. I'm not most people." I took his hand. "And for what it's worth, watching you with Jin these past 2 weeks, seeing how much you already love him, how hard you're fighting to protect him, it made me fall in love with you all over again." He pulled me close, and we sat there in our penthouse above Seoul, 2 people who'd survived something that should have broken them, and somehow came out stronger. 3 months later, I was in the garden at the Kong estate watching Jin show Min-jae his latest dinosaur fact when Seo-rin sat down beside me. "He calls you Ade now instead of Bonus-yama," she observed. "I know. I think he decided it was cooler. He asks me constantly when you're coming to visit again. That's because I bring him chocolate that you won't let him have." She laughed, actually laughed. "You're terrible for his dental health. And you're terrible for telling him vegetables taste good. We balance each other out." We watched Min-jae swing Jin up onto his shoulders, both of them laughing, and I felt something settle in my chest. This wasn't the family I'd imagined. Wasn't the neat, simple happily ever after that romance stories promise. But it was real, messy and complicated, and built on daily choices to keep showing up for each other. "Thank you," Seo-rin said quietly, "for not making this harder than it had to be. For protecting him when you had every reason not to. He's a good kid. He deserved people fighting for him. He deserves a lot of things, including having multiple people in his life who love him." She paused. "I was wrong about you. About what you'd mean to him. To us. You were protecting your son. I understand that. Still, I'm sorry for the photo album. For trying to make you feel like you didn't belong. That was cruel." "It was. But I'm not holding grudges. Life's too short, and this situation is already complicated enough." Jin ran over, demanding that Ade come see the cool bug he found. I stood up, let him drag me across the garden to examine what turned out to be a very ordinary beetle that he thought was the most amazing thing ever. And you know what? In that moment, with this little boy who called me by my name and Min-jae watching with that soft expression he got when his guard was completely down, and Seo-rin actually smiling at the chaos, it kind of was amazing. 6 months later, Min-jae hadn't stepped down. The board had unanimously voted to keep him as CEO after the Chairman Park scandal, with new oversight and accountability measures in place. Jin started international school in Seoul, splitting time between his mother's apartment and weekends at the estate where Min-jae and I visited. It wasn't perfect. Some days were harder than others. Some days the comments online about the foreign wife who couldn't give him a proper heir still stung. Some days I wondered if I'd made the right choice staying. But then Jin would show up at our penthouse for Sunday breakfast, drag me to the couch to watch his favorite cartoon, and fall asleep with his head on my shoulder while Minjae worked on emails in the kitchen. And in those moments, I knew. This wasn't about being first or second or blood or marriage or any of the things people said mattered. It was about choice, about choosing love over ego, about choosing a child's well-being over adult pride, about choosing to build something real instead of waiting for something perfect. Did I make the right choice staying? Most days, yes. Some days, I still don't know. But I made my choice with open eyes, knowing exactly what I was choosing and what it would cost. And that awareness, that intentionality, made all the difference. If this story hit you, if you understand what it means to fight for love that's complicated and messy and worth it, drop a comment below. Hit that like button if you believe family is about more than blood. And subscribe because love stories shouldn't just be about finding each other. They should be about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I married a Korean CEO, his ex walked back in with a son I didn't know existed, and somehow we built a family anyway. Not in spite of the complications, but through them. And maybe that's the real ending. Not perfect closure, but the daily, messy, beautiful work of building something worth keeping. Together.